So this morning our text is Isaiah 40, verses 28b through 31, and it reads, Yahweh is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. This God does not faint or grow weary, with a depth of understanding that is unsearchable. God gives strength to the weary and powers the powerless. Young women may grow tired and weary, young men may stumble and fall, but those who wait for Yahweh find a renewed power. They soar on wings, eagle's wings. They run and don't get weary. They walk and never tire. If you would, please pray with me. Gracious and loving God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you this day, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. When I was 6 years old, we moved from South Carolina to Georgia so that we could be closer to my mom's side of the family. By the time we moved to Valdosta, my grandfather was already sick and had been for a while. And I remember, I guess I was about 7 when he died. We had all gathered at my aunt's house. Perfect, the rain. We had all gathered at my aunt's house, and I did not grow up knowing my grandfather. This is my mom's dad, because we lived in South Carolina and very seldom traveled back home. But they had him there at my aunt's house, and I remember the moment that he died, and everybody in the house was just crying like crazy. This is a man that had raised all of these girls. There were like 11 or 13 kids in the family, I can't remember. And there were like one boy in the whole bunch of them. And if you've ever been around a bunch of women crying when someone has died, you really begin to wonder, should I not be crying too? It's infectious. And I remember sitting on the sofa, and my cousin Scott was sitting at the other end of the sofa, and he was teary, and he had grown up with Granddad and knew stories and had spent time on the farm with him. And I only had really one memory of the time that we had gone to their house at the old farmhouse, and I stood there peeling sugar cane because he made cane syrup and sold cane syrup. This was one of the ways that he made money. And people would come from all over the South to buy his cane syrup because of the way he did it. And so I'm watching Scott, and he's crying, and I kept thinking to myself, I should be crying too. This is obviously a sad moment, but I didn't know him, and the tears just didn't come. And I always felt guilty, just a little bit, that I didn't feel what everybody else felt in that moment. And I think about how we associate with certain people, certain emotions. And some we connect with so deeply that when they're gone, we grieve for long periods of time. And then there are other people that we know, they pass through our lives, and when they're gone, we're sad, but we just don't feel it in the same way that we do those folks who really made footprints across our heart. This morning I read from Isaiah, and I kept thinking about this idea of the people of Israel. And while they didn't suffer a personal loss of a friend, they don't identify, well, I lost my mom or I lost my dad. When we get to chapter 40 in the book of Isaiah, we're right at this moment where they begin to talk about real loss. A loss of their identity, a loss of their land, a loss of just who they are as a people. So they'd been under Assyrian occupation for a long time. And now they have this new ruler, Hezekiah, who's a real piece of work. He is. He's kind of an interesting character. He's out for himself, basically, not really out for the people. But he's thinking strategically. And so finally the Assyrians are kind of leaving him alone because there's a new, bigger kid in town, the Babylonians. And the Babylonian king comes and meets with Hezekiah, and Hezekiah shows him all of his riches, his gold, his silver, his spices, everything. Pretty enticing. And God speaks through Isaiah and says, you need to let Hezekiah know that because of what he's done, he's opened a door. Because of this alliance that he's trying to make with the Babylonians, things are not going to go well for him. His family are going to be taken into captivity. Most of Israel is going to be taken into captivity and be subjugated by the Babylonians. And then we get to this Isaiah 40. And the very first verse says, comfort my people, O God, comfort them. There's this sense that God is reaching out to the people and saying to them one more time, you are not alone. You are not walking alone. You need to understand that I've been here with you. I will always be here with you, no matter what the circumstances. And as I was reading this and really studying this like several chapters right there in Isaiah, I realized that we talk about loss so often in terms of death only. But loss comes in so many different ways to us. We lose jobs. Sometimes it's just a broken friendship. Sometimes we're in accidents and we lose our vehicle. Sometimes we lose our health insurance. And with every loss that we incur, I think our society teaches us that we're not really supposed to be concerned about those things. That why are you crying over something so insignificant as losing your health insurance? But I wouldn't say that it's insignificant. We just minimize these things. And we try to pretend like they're not as important as other things. We hold death as sort of the standard, the gold standard of, yes, you can cry when someone dies, but please don't shed a tear over losing your health care. Seriously? We've become so callous, I think, at what people experience on a daily basis as loss. Sometimes we don't even ask them what it means to lose something, how it makes them feel. In the whole of chapter 40, Isaiah is reminding the people of who God is, the mightiness of God, that God is the creator of everything, that he set the oceans in place, that he set the firmament in place, that he did mighty works on this earth before a single breath was drawn. And then we finally get to this last little bit. And every time, I remember the first time I ever heard Isaiah 40:31, the very last verse. And I heard it first in the King James Version. But those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings of eagles. And they will run and not be weary. And they will walk and not be faint. It was on a cover that I got for my Bible when I was 10 years old. And I was always taught that this idea of waiting on God was a way of sort of sitting back and letting God handle things. But that's not at all what this passage is telling us. This passage is talking more about the strength and the power of God in our lives, working in our lives every single day. That without God we would faint, and without God we would be weary. And with every loss that we incur, God is always present. God is always there as our comforter to provide us courage and strength to make it through yet one more day. This God does not faint or grow weary, with a depth of understanding that is unsearchable. It's hard for me to even imagine going one day without holding on tightly to what I believe is God. It's that daily connection that takes me through every single step of this journey. One day at a time, one step at a time, as I hold on to God, as I trust and put my faith in God, I can hear God say, "Comfort my people. Comfort, oh comfort my people." I wish we did a better job of comforting each other, of really touching the lives of people that are so close to us, regardless of what the issue is. Even if it's they spent 2 hours looking for their keys because they put them down somewhere and they just couldn't find them. How cool would it be to say, I get it. Sometimes I'm forgetful. Sometimes I do that. And we lament together. When I was at seminary, one of the things that we were required to do is a senior sermon. And my senior sermon was scheduled, and the day before I was to do my sermon, we were called into the chapel for an assembly. Frank Stolfa, who had been a professor there for 25 years, had written a letter to the community letting us know that he was resigning his position because he had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I was preaching the next day. And it was just maybe a God thing, I don't know. I would like to think that it was a God thing. But one of the passages that I could choose from for that lectionary cycle was a passage from Lamentations. And that's what I was preaching on. And it took about 30 seconds to tweak the sermon to make sure that I mentioned something about what was happening in our community. And when I got there Wednesday morning, I was sitting in the chapel before everybody got there, and I was praying, because this is a big deal. You get graded on this, right? And I felt this, I'm going to call it urging of the Holy Spirit, to sing this song entitled "Help Me," that Kathy Tricoli sings as my opening, as my prayer. And I remember standing there singing this song, and all the anxiety that I had, all the fear that I had just washed away. And the chorus in this song is so beautiful. In this dark hour, I have only the power that made the stars to mend my heart. Though I've tried on my own, I'm not that strong. You're all I've got. Help me, God. What are those moments when we don't have anything else but to hold on to God. We don't have any other thing to grab hold of. It's that dark night of the soul, sometimes 3 a.m, when you wake up and you feel this heaviness and there's nothing else. And all we can do is say, help me, God. The second verse of that song is probably the one that hits me the hardest. Sometimes people leave, but I can grieve because life isn't always fair. Help me to hold on. Because though I can't see you, I believe you're there. I know you're there in this dark hour. I know only the power that made the stars and then my heart. And I believe that. I believe that's true. And so today, as we celebrate All Saints' Day, as we look at loss, as we look at the people who have impacted our lives, and even those that we never met. I mean, I think about some of the great heroes that have come before us. And I look at the work of Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr. And there's no end to the list of people that we can hold up and say, these truly are saints in our world. I think about family members, even folks that we may not have really liked here on this earth. They're still saints in our world. They belong to us. They belong to God. And for that, I will always, always be thankful. May it be so. Amen.